Welcome to Auto Mundial, the weekly car news and review show where this week we're taking a look at Ford's electric SUV, the Mustang Mach-E.
We also have a crossover from Mini and an all-new electric estate car from Porsche, the Taycan Turismo.
Plus, in this week's Deep Drive, we check out the latest BMW Z4. That's all coming up. But first,
Mercedes has begun production of battery systems for the new EQS, which is due to go on sale later this year. The new EV luxury saloon will use a new generation of battery technology, which Mercedes says will give the car over 430 miles of range with improved battery energy density. The Stuttgart brand's Hettelfingen plant has been given an overhaul for the new battery production, which will see the new EQS take on the likes of the Porsche Taycan and Audi e-tron GT, as it aims to tempt buyers who would traditionally go for an S-Class into EV driving.
the Ford Mustang is one of the most instantly recognisable cars on the planet. Thanks to numerous movie appearances and general iconic status, anyone can spot a Mustang. With its long bonnet, low roofline and rumbling V8, it's no wonder that it's one of the most successful sports cars in history. Now though, there is a new one, and things are a little different. This is the all-new Ford Mustang Mach-E, and it is certainly not a V8 sports car. Instead, this is an all-electric SUV with 4 doors and copy-and-paste crossover styling. We think it's fair to say that none of us saw this coming. Clearly a case of the marketing team getting rather excited. The Mach-E shares a few minor styling cues with its namesake. It gets the traditional pony badge, similar lights front and back, and that seems to be about it. It's far from a Mustang as we know it though, and is likely to divide opinions among petrol heads the world over. Don't worry though, the normal Mustang is not leaving us anytime soon. So, questionable branding aside, what's the Mustang Mach-E actually like? Well, on the face of it, it seems like a pretty regular crossover. It gets some aggressive styling at the front, while the rest of it looks largely like anything else in this class. It gets a sleek low roofline though, and those evocative 3-bar taillights.
Step inside though, and the striking cabin is a long way from anything we've seen from Ford before. As is the trend at the moment, there's a horizontal theme to the dashboard architecture with flat surfaces and a full-width air vent. The most striking feature though is the immense 15.5-inch central touchscreen, which dominates the interior. Clearly inspired by Tesla's infotainment screens, it's like having a TV in your car. It neatly incorporates a handy and tactile rotary dial into the screen itself, which makes it a little easier to use on the move. As is becoming the norm with new releases, it doesn't feature an instrument cluster. Instead, it has another screen behind the steering wheel, this time a 10.2-inch unit displaying your speed and range.
The Mach-E is available with a range of different motor and battery combinations. Entry-level cars are rear-wheel drive with 255 brake horsepower and 280 miles of range. The next one up is also driven by the rear wheels, but the power rises to 282 bhp with an impressive 370-mile range, while 0 to 62 miles per hour is dealt with in just under 8 seconds. There's a choice of 4x4 models too, the most potent of which being the 333 brake horsepower 4X, although its top speed remains limited to 111 miles per hour, the same as the rest of the range. So, while the pony badges and Mustang name may feel like a slap in the face to some, underneath the marketing bump, this could prove to be one of the best-selling EVs of this year. And now, time for an Auto Mundial deep drive as we review the BMW Z4.
The Z4 feels like it was made to a very traditional sports car formula. There are 2 seats, a petrol engine under a long bonnet at the front, rear-wheel drive and a fabric roof rather than a folding metal one. The previous model had a metal hardtop, but swapping it for a canvas version has saved weight and increased boot space. The only major thing missing from an enthusiast shopping list is a manual gearbox. The Z4 comes with an 8-speed automatic only. You have the choice of a 4-cylinder 2-litre petrol engine or a 6-cylinder 3-litre petrol engine, and there are 3 trim levels to choose from. The 2-litre is available in Sport and M Sport form, while the 3-litre model comes in its own M Performance trim. Now this is the 30i, which has the more powerful version of the 2-litre engine on offer. This has 254 brake horsepower, does 0 to 62 in 5.4 seconds, which makes it a very quick car. Now the entry level has 194 brake horsepower. While it is still as fun to drive, having the extra 60 bhp does make it feel that little bit nicer. Plus, it doesn't really affect the fuel economy, which is officially around 39 miles per gallon. Now you'll need to pay £7 more if you want the range-topping M40i, if you're desperate for the 6-cylinder 3-litre engine. That will give you 355 brake horsepower and has a 0 to 62 time of 4.5 seconds. While the M40i may be the fastest and most tuneful version of the Z4, the bigger engine also makes it heavier than the others. The extra weight, as well as the extra power, means it's less economical, and while you might not care about that too much, it also means the M40i is slightly less nimble and in some ways less fun to drive than the lighter versions. For potential buyers, how the Z4 handles is going to be the most important thing about it, especially when so many of them will be considering a Porsche Boxster.
After the break, more on the Z4 and Porsche's new EV estate car. Still to come, the Taycan Cross Turismo, but first, part 2 of our BMW Z4 deep drive.
An adaptive suspension system is standard across the range of the M40i, but you can also add it as an option on the other models. It allows you to optimise the stiffness of the suspension depending on how you're driving the car, be it quick cornering or motorway cruising. The short answer is, it's very comfortable. Combined with the automatic gearbox, which is very smooth, it makes the new Z4 the kind of car that I would happily do long journeys in. The seats are very comfortable. We have the optional comfort pack, which means that they can be adjusted electrically, and also they have lumbar support, which is lovely. Now that pack also includes heated steering and a wind deflector. Now this car is remarkably quiet with the roof down, so you don't even have to raise your voice when you're talking to someone in the passenger seat. But having the wind deflector adds to the serenity, so it's nice and peaceful, even when you're on the motorway. Look around the rest of the cabin and you've got a fully digital instrument panel behind the steering wheel. Next to it on the left, you've got a 10.25-inch infotainment screen, and together they form the BMW Live Cockpit Pro system, which comes as standard in all Z4s and is actually one of the best infotainment systems on the market. I'm afraid the general look of the interior is one area where the Z4 lets me down a little bit. Yes, it's very nicely laid out, well built, well finished, but it's a sports car. For a sports car, it feels a bit boring. This kind of has a generic VIP executive lounge in an airport type vibe. The interior of an Alpine A110 or the Boxster definitely feels sportier, like they've got a sense of flair and a sense of occasion, whereas this one doesn't. The new BMW Z4 is a big step forward from the old one. Getting rid of the folding metal roof has made it a better drive, it's more practical, the engines on offer are very impressive, and the handling is a lot more balanced than before. Now, the nature of the Z4's improvement just goes to show that BMW want to directly compete with Porsche rather than Mercedes this time round. Unfortunately, it's not as good to drive as the Boxster, but it's more fun than the Mercedes SLC. The high levels of comfort and luxury have unfortunately been let down by the conservative interior styling, but makes it the sort of car you would happily do long journeys in without feeling tetchy. The same can't be said for other stripped back sports cars like the Mazda MX-5 or the Alpine A110. I think what we have here then is a really impressive all-rounder. If you want a smart, comfortable, luxurious two-seater convertible, then there's not much more at this price that's any better than the Z4. But there's one question you should ask yourself before buying one of these. Would I rather have a Boxster?
Next week on Deep Drive, the Volkswagen ID.3.
When the Mini Countryman was first launched way back in 2010, we laughed at the idea of a Mini SUV. But now, after more than 10 years on sale, it seems we needn't have. With strong sales across the decade, the Countryman has now been updated. The previous gen of Countryman was well received. It was more spacious, more practical and more grown up to drive than the original. But all the while you couldn't escape the fact that the car really wasn't that mini at all. But we've got used to that now, and after a decade on the roads, the Countryman is a staple small SUV. Mini sold 250,000 in the first 3 years, and they've not stopped flying out of the showroom since. Now, though, it's been updated. Since the last version was first introduced, the rest of Mini's lineup has had a refresh. To keep it in line with its stablemates, it gets some familiar design cues like the new grille and the patriotic Union Jack taillights. Other exterior tweaks include a fresh selection of alloys up to 19 inches and optional piano black styling package. Buyers benefit from adaptive LEDs with auto-dimming as standard, as well as a new choice of paint jobs. On the inside, the Countryman has a new 5-inch instrument panel straight from the Mini Electric, as well as an array of leather upholstery choices. The central infotainment system remains from the old model, with 6.5 or 8.8-inch versions available. Under the bonnet, the range of engines remains unchanged, starting with a turbocharged 1.5-litre petrol all the way up to the Cooper S variant with a turbocharged 2-litre unit. But while it uses the same engines, they have been updated. Petrol engines get a new injection system and a cylinder head, while diesel models meet the latest European emissions standards thanks to an updated AdBlue system. All models are front-wheel drive with a 6-speed manual as standard, but other drivetrains and gearboxes are available for a premium price. Overall then, it's practical and back up to date, and it is a good option for those looking for a new SUV. But what else is around?
Well, keeping it in the BMW Group family, the BMW X2 immediately springs to mind. Like the Mini, it's small and stylish, but with a more premium feel. The X2 uses the same platform as the Countryman, meaning it shares most of its internals. The chassis is tuned differently though, and the cabin is completely different from the much funkier Minis. The whole car just feels a bit more mature and, if we're honest, a bit more boring. There is a fast one though to rival the fastest Countryman, the X2 M35i, with a 300 horsepower 2-litre engine that's good for 0 to 62 miles per hour in around 5 seconds. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the X2 is more expensive, but despite this, the badge alone will be enough to tempt many buyers away from its British alternative. Its rakish roofline doesn't compromise space too much, and it certainly stands out on street corners. In fact, we'd argue that it's one of the best-looking crossovers out there. Another attractive small SUV is the popular Volkswagen T-Roc. Largely based on the Golf hatchback, the T-Roc seamlessly blends VW's signature build quality and practicality with a stylish look and modern interior with lots of body-coloured trim. Entry-level cars get a fizzy little 1-litre turbocharged engine, while the range tops out with the impressive T-Roc R, a 300 horsepower monster with Golf R running gear.
So what's the pick of the bunch? Well, while the BMW gets more badge appeal, it's the Mini that gets our vote. We like the styling, and the JCW model proves that compact SUVs don't need to be boring.
When Porsche revealed the electric Taycan in 2019, it grabbed headlines around the world. Finally, there was an EV from an established manufacturer with the performance figures to take on Tesla. However, nobody could have predicted just how popular the Taycan would become. It's only been on sale for 18 months or so, but last year it outsold both the Boxster and Cayman models individually. In November of 2020, it was the brand's best-selling model in the UK. So, with Porsche's foot firmly in the EV door, it's been busy building another. This is the new Taycan Cross Turismo, and it's more than just an estate version of the saloon. While it may have an extended roofline to offer more passenger and boot space, Porsche's engineers have also been busy turning the Taycan into something of an off-roader. Okay, it's not exactly a Land Rover, but the Cross Turismo has been raised by 20mm over the standard car, or 30mm if you spec the optional off-road pack. This beefy suspension is paired with some chunky wheels and tyres, as well as some black plastic trim to complete the SUV makeover. Many of the rough and ready styling cues have been inspired by the 2018 Mission E Cross Turismo concept car, with some Panamera thrown in for good measure. All of these visual changes may be quite small, but added up together, the Cross Turismo is an excitingly unique car, and an extremely cool alternative to the ranks of more conventional electric SUVs. But while it's the styling that's first grabbed our attention, it'll likely be the practicality that appeals to buyers. The Cross Turismo gets 47mm of extra headroom for rear seat passengers. Boot space has been improved too over the regular saloon version, with over 1,200 litres of luggage space with the seats folded down. However, the most important aspect of any Porsche is the performance. Like the saloon version, the Taycan Cross Turismo is available in 4 different trim levels. The entry-level 4 model starts at just under £80,000 and gets up to 469 brake horsepower with the overboost function. It'll hit 62 miles per hour from rest in 5.1 seconds and has an official range of 283 miles. After that are the 4S and Turbo models, each gaining horsepower respectively, until we arrive at the top-spec Turbo S. Don't be fooled by the name, it is still electric, and as a result its 751 lightning-quick horses will get you from 0 to 62 in a neck-snapping 2.9 seconds, on its way to a top speed of 161. You will need deep pockets though. The Turbo S starts at almost £140,000, and the range takes a bit of a hit to 260 miles. But while it may currently be the only fast electric estate car on the market, there are numerous petrol ones, not least this, the mighty Audi RS6.
While its 592 horsepower V8 might not provide the instant shove of the Porsche, it does supply a fabulous soundtrack. It's around half a second slower to 62 than the Turbo S Taycan, but it has a much higher top speed of 189. And while it's hardly a Toyota Prius, it does give a nod towards the environment with a 48-volt mild hybrid system that reduces emissions around town and saves fuel.
Both of these cars then are like bookends. The Audi is likely to be one of the last fire-breathing family estates, a supercar slayer with room for your dog, while the Porsche is taking the baton of practical performance into the next generation. Join us again next week on Auto Mundial as we check out the all-new BMW M3.